It was a calm afternoon in a small cozy house where the gentle sunlight entered through the window and touched every corner of the living room. The sweet sound of wind passing through the trees outside made the place feel peaceful. Inside the house lived Rohan, Mira, their 3-month-old baby Arav, and their lovely dog Bruno. This little family shared a bond filled with love and care. Arav was the newest joy in their lives. His bright eyes and soft smile brought happiness to everyone who saw him. He was small, innocent, and full of quiet wonder. Every day Mira would talk to him in a soft voice while Rohan watched with pride. But there was someone else who loved Arav just as much as they did. Bruno, their loyal Labrador. Bruno had been with Rohan and Mira for 2 years. He was a big dog with brown and white fur and kind eyes that always looked full of understanding. When the couple brought Arav home for the first time, they were a little worried about how Bruno would react. But to their surprise, Bruno had walked slowly to the crib, sniffed the tiny baby, and then wagged his tail happily. From that day, he decided that Arav was his little brother, and he took that job very seriously. Every morning when Mira carried Arav into the living room, Bruno would come running. He would sit beside her and wait for a chance to look at the baby. Sometimes, when Arav laughed, Bruno's tail would wag in excitement. When Arav cried, Bruno would get restless until Mira comforted the baby. It was as if Bruno could feel every emotion in the house. That afternoon, after a long playtime, Mira gently placed Arav in his crib. The baby had just finished drinking his milk. His small eyelids grew heavy as he slowly drifted into sleep. Mira smiled lovingly, watching his tiny chest rise and fall with each breath. She tucked the soft blanket around him and whispered, "Sleep well, my little one." Bruno lay quietly near the crib. His paws were stretched forward and his head rested between them. His eyes were half closed, but he was alert. He always stayed close whenever the baby was asleep, as if protecting him from anything that might disturb his peace. Mira noticed Bruno's calm behavior and felt thankful for his gentle heart. Rohan sat in the other room working on his laptop. The sound of the keys clicking mixed with the soft hum of the ceiling fan. Mira folded clothes while keeping an eye on the clock. Every few minutes, she looked toward the bedroom door to make sure everything was fine. Whenever she peeked in, she saw the same sweet picture: Bruno near the crib, the baby sleeping peacefully and the sunlight falling across the room. Outside, the world was busy, but inside that house, time felt slow and kind. The air carried the smell of baby lotion and the warmth of love. Bruno looked up every time Arav moved in his sleep. His tail gave a small wag, then he rested again. It was as if he understood that the baby's dreams were fragile and needed protection. At one moment, a soft breeze entered through the window and moved the curtain. Arav made a small sound like a sigh. Instantly, Bruno raised his head. His ears stood straight and his eyes turned to the crib. He stayed still, watching carefully. After a few seconds, Arav's face relaxed again and he continued sleeping peacefully. Bruno slowly lowered his head and relaxed. Mira came to the doorway and smiled at the sight. The baby was resting so calmly and Bruno was lying beside him like a guardian. She turned to Rohan and whispered, "He takes care of Arav like he's his own baby." Rohan looked up from his laptop and smiled. "That's because he loves him," he said softly. The soft ticking of the clock filled the room. The afternoon light grew warmer as the sun moved lower in the sky. Mira and Rohan finished their work and sat together on the sofa, feeling thankful for the simple peace in their home. Neither of them knew that soon something heartwarming would happen, something so pure that it would make everyone who heard it believe in the quiet love between a baby and his loyal friend. The golden afternoon slowly turned into a calm evening. The sunlight faded from the window, leaving the room in a soft orange glow. The air inside the house was peaceful, filled with the faint sound of the ceiling fan and the soft breathing of baby Arav. Bruno was still lying beside the crib, his eyes half open, watching every small movement of the baby. Arav moved his little hands while sleeping, his fingers curling and opening slowly. Bruno watched with quiet attention, his head lifting slightly every time the baby moved. It was as if he was trying to understand what the baby was dreaming about. Mira came into the room to check again and smiled at the sweet sight. Bruno's calm eyes looked up at her for a moment, then turned back toward Arav as if to say, "Don't worry. I am here," Mira whispered gently. "Good boy, Bruno." She walked out quietly, closing the door halfway to keep the room warm and comfortable. The baby continued to sleep peacefully while Bruno remained steady and still like a soft shadow near the crib. A few minutes later, a light sound came from outside the window. The wind was growing stronger, making the tree branches touch against the glass. Arav moved in his sleep, making a tiny whimper. Bruno immediately lifted his head. His eyes looked toward the window, then back at the baby. The small noise seemed to bother Arav, so Bruno slowly stood up, walked closer to the crib and sat down beside it. His tail moved gently as he looked at the baby's face. He then did something that made the moment more heart-touching. Bruno placed his head near the edge of the crib and stayed still, creating a soft presence near the baby. The warmth of his body and his calm breathing made the air around Arav feel safer. Slowly, the baby stopped moving and continued to sleep peacefully again. In the living room, Rohan and Mira were talking about their day. Rohan was sharing about his work while Mira was folding small clothes of Arav. She smiled as she said, "Bruno has become like a second parent. He doesn't leave Arav alone even for a minute." Rohan laughed softly. "I think he understands how important Arav is to us. He feels it." When Mira went again to check on the baby, she found Bruno in the same position, his head near the crib and his eyes closed gently. Arav was sleeping peacefully, his tiny hand resting near Bruno's ear through the crib's small gap. It looked as if he was touching his best friend in his dreams. The picture was so heartwarming that Mira took out her phone quietly and clicked a photo. She didn't want to disturb them. When Rohan saw the picture, his eyes softened. "This is love in its purest form," he said softly. They both sat for a while, watching the photo and smiling, feeling lucky to have such a loyal companion. Time passed slowly. The sound of the wind outside became calmer again. The first stars began to shine in the evening sky. Bruno's ears twitched a few times, but he didn't move much. His only focus was Arav. The baby's small breaths and the soft rhythm of the ceiling fan filled the room with calmness. After a while, Mira walked in to lift Arav for his evening feeding. She smiled at Bruno and whispered, "Thank you for watching him." Bruno wagged his tail gently as if he understood her words. Mira picked up Arav, and the baby slowly opened his eyes, blinking at the light. His lips curled into a sleepy smile when he saw Bruno near the crib. Bruno's tail wagged faster. He stood up and looked at the baby with bright eyes. Arav made a soft sound, a happy little coo as if greeting his furry friend. Mira laughed softly. "You two are best friends already." After feeding the baby, Mira placed Arav back in the crib. Bruno once again settled beside him, this time lying a little closer. The baby watched him for a few seconds, then slowly closed his eyes again, falling back to sleep. As night arrived, the family prepared for dinner. Bruno didn't move from his place until Mira called him gently. Even then, he walked out quietly, taking one last look at the crib before leaving the room. His eyes were full of care and love. It was just another ordinary day, but for this family, it was a day that reminded them how deep a dog's love can be. Bruno had once again proved that kindness and loyalty speak louder than words. The next morning began with soft light entering through the curtains. The house was calm, and the sweet smell of breakfast came from the kitchen. Mira was preparing tea while humming a soft tune. Rohan was sitting near the dining table reading messages on his phone. Bruno was already awake, sitting near Arav's crib as usual, his eyes watching the baby with gentle care. Arav was slowly waking up from his sleep. His tiny hands moved in the air and a small smile appeared on his face. Bruno noticed the baby's movement and wagged his tail quietly. He stood up, stretched his legs, and went closer to the crib. The baby looked at Bruno and made a soft sound that was full of joy. Bruno leaned his head slightly near the crib and looked at Arav with warmth. The baby moved his fingers as if trying to reach his friend. Mira entered the room and smiled at the lovely scene. "Good morning, my little ones," she said softly. Bruno wagged his tail and Arav giggled in response. Mira lifted Arav from the crib and placed him gently on a soft blanket on the bed. Bruno followed her steps and sat beside the bed, watching the baby carefully. Arav's eyes were bright as he moved his small hands and feet, making soft sounds that filled the room with happiness. Bruno lowered his head close to the bed and watched every tiny movement. When Arav's hand touched Bruno's ear by accident, Bruno didn't move away. Instead, he stayed calm, allowing the baby to explore. The gentle touch of the baby's hand made Bruno's tail move slowly from side to side. It was a quiet moment full of trust and love. After a while, Rohan came into the room carrying a cup of tea for Mira. He smiled when he saw Bruno and Arav together. "Look at them," he said. "They understand each other without saying anything." Mira nodded, her eyes filled with warmth. "Bruno has become Arav's first friend," she replied. As the day continued, the small house was filled with laughter. Arav was more active now, looking around with curious eyes. Mira spread a soft mat on the floor for his playtime. She placed a few colorful toys in front of him, and Bruno lay nearby, watching closely. Arav made happy sounds as he moved his hands toward the toys. Every time a toy rolled away, Bruno used his nose to bring it back near the baby. Mira watched this with surprise. "You're such a smart boy, Bruno," she said cheerfully. Bruno wagged his tail proudly, as if he knew he had done something good. Later in the afternoon, the family sat together in the living room. Arav was resting in Mira's lap while Bruno lay near Rohan's feet. The sound of soft music played in the background. Mira looked at Rohan and said, "We should share the photo I took last night." "It was so sweet," Rohan smiled and nodded. He opened his phone, found the picture, and decided to post it on social media. The photo showed Bruno lying beside the crib with Arav's tiny hand resting near his fur. He added a short caption, "Our loyal protector and our little angel." Within a few hours, people began to react to the post. Friends and family commented with love and admiration. Some wrote that the picture made their hearts melt. Others said it reminded them of the gentle bond between animals and babies. Rohan and Mira were touched by the warm responses. That evening, as the sun set and the golden light filled the house, Rohan sat quietly watching Arav and Bruno. He felt proud of how caring Bruno had become. Mira joined him, holding a cup of tea. "I think Bruno knows he's part of something special," she said softly. Rohan nodded. "He has changed since Arav came. He's calmer, more patient, and full of love. It's like he understands this baby is the heart of our home." Bruno, as if hearing his name, lifted his head and looked at them. His eyes were calm and full of loyalty. Arav let out a soft giggle, and Bruno moved closer to him, placing his head near the baby's legs. Mira smiled at the touching sight and whispered, "He really is the best big brother." Night arrived with a gentle quietness. Mira placed Arav back in his crib, kissed his forehead, and whispered good night. Bruno lay near the crib once again, his eyes watching over the baby as the stars began to shine outside. The soft rhythm of the baby's breathing filled the room, and Bruno's steady presence made everything feel safe and peaceful. That night, Mira looked at the two of them and thought to herself that love doesn't always need words. Sometimes it only needs a loyal heart and a gentle touch. The next day was bright and peaceful. The sun was shining softly, and the air carried the light scent of fresh flowers from the garden outside. Mira opened the windows to let the gentle breeze flow through the rooms. Arav had just finished drinking his milk and was now feeling sleepy. His eyes blinked slowly, and he gave a tiny yawn. Bruno was already sitting near the crib, waiting quietly as Mira carried Arav into the room. The dog's eyes followed every step she took. He wagged his tail once, then sat still as Mira placed the baby carefully on the soft blanket inside the crib. Arav's face relaxed as he slowly drifted into his nap. Mira looked at Bruno and smiled. "All right, my brave boy, you know what to do," she said gently. Bruno tilted his head as if understanding her words. He moved closer to the crib and lay down, placing his head near its edge. His calm eyes watched over the baby like a quiet guardian. Rohan came in holding a cup of tea and saw the same heartwarming scene. "You'll never get tired of watching this, will you?" he said to Mira with a smile. Mira nodded softly. "No matter how many times I see it, it always feels new." Their bond is so pure. They both stood for a few minutes, enjoying the peaceful view before leaving the room quietly so Arav could rest. Bruno stayed behind, his body still and relaxed. The only sound in the room was the gentle rhythm of Arav's breathing and the faint hum of the ceiling fan. A few moments later, a small noise came from the window. The wind had moved the curtain, and the sudden motion made Arav stir slightly in his sleep. Bruno lifted his head instantly. His eyes looked at the baby's face, then at the moving curtain. After watching for a few seconds, he seemed to understand that there was nothing to worry about. He lay his head down again, closer this time, near the crib's wooden side. The baby moved again, and this time one of his tiny hands slipped out from the blanket. The hand hung softly over the edge of the crib. Bruno looked at it for a moment, then slowly moved his nose closer until it touched Arav's small fingers. The baby's hand rested gently on Bruno's fur, and just like that, Arav went completely still. It was as if the warmth and softness of Bruno's fur made him feel safe. Bruno didn't move at all. His eyes stayed half open, his breathing steady and slow. It was a picture of quiet love, a loyal friend watching over the smallest member of his family. In the living room, Mira sat on the sofa, folding tiny clothes while Rohan worked on his computer. Suddenly, Mira thought of checking on Arav. When she reached the door, she stopped quietly. What she saw made her heart melt completely. Arav's tiny hand was resting on Bruno's head while the dog lay still beside the crib, not moving even an inch. The sunlight from the window fell gently on them, making the whole room glow with warmth. It looked like a perfect painting of love and innocence. Mira wanted to call Rohan, but she didn't want to break the silence. She stepped back quietly and whispered, "Rohan, come here." Rohan followed her, and when he saw the scene, he smiled softly. "This is something special," he said. "You should take another photo." Mira nodded and clicked the picture carefully without making any sound. The image captured that perfect moment, the baby sleeping with peace, his little hand resting on Bruno's fur, and Bruno's calm eyes full of loyalty. Later that evening, when Rohan posted the new photo online, it spread even faster than the first one. People from everywhere started commenting. Some said it brought tears to their eyes. Others wrote that it reminded them of the love between animals and humans. Many said that the picture showed what true friendship looks like. Messages began pouring in from friends and strangers alike. Some shared their own stories about their pets and babies. Mira read every message with a smile, touched by how a simple moment inside their home had warmed so many hearts. At night, as she tucked Arav into bed again, Mira looked at Bruno and said softly, "You're not just our dog, Bruno, you're family. You've made our home feel complete." Bruno wagged his tail gently, then went to his usual spot near the crib. As Mira turned off the light, the soft moonlight entered through the window. Bruno lay down quietly, keeping his watch as Arav drifted into another peaceful sleep. The stars shone brightly outside, and inside that small room, a gentle bond continued to grow stronger. A bond built on trust, care, and the kind of love that needs no words at all. A fresh morning filled the little home with soft light and the sound of chirping birds. Mira was in the kitchen preparing breakfast while Rohan got ready for work. The sweet smell of tea and toast spread through the house. In the bedroom, Arav had just woken up. His tiny eyes blinked at the morning light, and his soft giggle filled the room. Bruno was already awake, sitting beside the crib with his tail wagging slowly. He had been there since early morning, keeping an eye on the baby. When Arav made his first happy sound, Bruno stood up and gently placed his paws on the edge of the crib, looking down at his little friend. The baby waved his hands and smiled as if greeting him. Mira walked in and laughed softly at the sight. "Good morning, my sweet boys," she said warmly. Bruno looked at her and wagged his tail faster. Mira lifted Arav from the crib and kissed his forehead. "Did you sleep well?" she asked in a gentle voice. Arav made a soft cooing sound as if answering her. After changing the baby's clothes, Mira placed him on a blanket on the floor. She surrounded him with a few soft toys and cushions. Bruno immediately lay down beside him, his eyes full of care. Arav stretched his hands toward Bruno's face, touching his soft fur. Bruno stayed calm and quiet, enjoying the baby's tiny hands exploring his ears and nose. Rohan came in, smiling at the two of them. "You two look like best friends," he said. Bruno wagged his tail in reply. Mira laughed and said, "I think they understand each other more than we understand them." Rohan nodded, finishing his cup of tea. Before leaving for work, he bent down, patted Bruno's head and said, "Take care of them, buddy." After Rohan left, Mira sat near the window with Arav and Bruno. The baby was playful and cheerful. He kept looking at Bruno with wide eyes full of wonder. Mira noticed how Bruno always seemed to know what Arav needed. If the baby dropped a toy, Bruno gently pushed it back with his nose. If Arav made a sound, Bruno would tilt his head and watch with attention, as if trying to understand what the baby was saying. When it was time for Arav's morning nap, Mira placed him back in the crib. She turned on soft lullaby music and watched as the baby slowly closed his eyes. Bruno once again took his place near the crib. His breathing became slow, matching the baby's rhythm. The whole room felt calm and peaceful. A few minutes later, Mira's phone buzzed with messages. She looked at it and saw more comments on the photo Rohan had posted the previous night. The number of likes and shares had increased quickly. People from many different places were writing kind words about Bruno and Arav. Some said it was the most heartwarming picture they had seen in a long time. Others shared how their own pets showed love and care to their children. Mira smiled as she read through the messages. One comment caught her eye. It said, "This is not just a photo. It's a reminder that love has no language. It's pure and real." She looked at Bruno and whispered softly, "That's true. You show love better than words ever could." Later that afternoon, Rohan returned home early. He wanted to spend more time with Arav and Bruno. When he entered the house, he saw both of them lying together on the blanket again. Arav was awake this time, playing with a small soft ball, while Bruno gently nudged it back each time it rolled away. The baby laughed with every little push, and Bruno wagged his tail proudly. Rohan sat on the floor beside them and watched for a few minutes. It was a simple game, but the happiness in the room was beyond words. He picked up his phone and recorded a short video of them playing together. The baby's laughter, Bruno's patience, and the warm light of the afternoon made the moment perfect. When Mira joined them, Rohan showed her the video. She smiled and said, "This deserves to be shared too. People should see what kindness looks like." Rohan nodded. That evening, he uploaded the short video online with the caption, "Unspoken friendship that warms every heart." Within hours, the video began to spread everywhere. People commented again, calling it the sweetest thing they had seen all week. Some said the world needed more moments like this, simple, peaceful, and full of love. As night came, the little home felt even more special. Arav was asleep in his crib, Bruno resting beside him as always. Rohan and Mira sat on the sofa, feeling grateful. "He's not just our dog," Mira said softly. "He's part of Arav's story now." Rohan smiled and looked toward the bedroom where Bruno lay near the baby. "Yes," he replied. "He's our guardian angel with paws." Inside that quiet room, the baby and the dog slept side by side once again, their friendship growing deeper with each passing day, a friendship so pure that it touched hearts far beyond their small home. The next morning brought new excitement to the little family. Sunlight filled the living room, and the soft sound of birds made the air fresh and cheerful. Mira was busy preparing breakfast while Rohan checked his phone at the dining table. He smiled as he looked at the screen and called out, "Mira, come see this. The video we shared last night is everywhere now." Mira came closer, curious. On Rohan's phone, she saw the video of Arav and Bruno playing together. It had thousands of views, and the number was still rising. There were hundreds of comments filled with love. People wrote about how happy the video made them feel. Some even said they watched it many times because it was so pure and peaceful. Mira's eyes widened in surprise. "I can't believe so many people have seen it," she said softly. Rohan smiled and replied, "It's because their friendship is real. People can feel that." As they talked, Bruno walked into the room with his tail wagging. Arav was in his baby seat nearby, giggling at Bruno's every move. Mira looked at them and said, "Our little stars are famous now." Rohan laughed. "Yes, but I hope the fame doesn't go to Bruno's head." They both laughed, and Bruno barked once softly as if he understood. The rest of the morning went by quickly. Mira received messages from friends and neighbors who had seen the video. Everyone wanted to meet Bruno and Arav. Some even said they wanted to visit just to see the adorable duo together. Later that afternoon, Rohan came home early with a surprise. He held a small parcel and handed it to Mira. "What's this?" she asked with curiosity. Rohan smiled and said, "Open it." Inside the box was a new collar for Bruno. It was blue with a small silver tag that read, "Big Brother Bruno." Mira smiled warmly. "It's perfect," she said. When Rohan placed the collar on Bruno, the dog wagged his tail happily and looked proud. Arav reached out his small hand, touching the shiny tag. Mira captured the moment with her phone again. "You two are making beautiful memories together," she whispered softly. In the evening, Mira decided to take Arav and Bruno to the garden outside their house. The weather was calm and the grass was soft underfoot. Arav lay on a small blanket and Bruno sat beside him. The baby looked around, watching the moving leaves and listening to the chirping birds. Every time a leaf fell near him, Bruno gently pushed it aside with his nose as if keeping the space clean for his little friend. Neighbors walking by stopped to look at the heartwarming sight. One elderly woman smiled and said, "That dog has a heart of gold." Mira nodded proudly and replied, "He really does. He's like another member of the family." Rohan joined them a little later, carrying tea for Mira. They sat together watching Arav and Bruno enjoying the soft breeze. Arav made small happy sounds while Bruno looked around carefully, always making sure the baby was safe. When the sun began to set, the sky turned orange and pink. The moment was peaceful. Mira took another photo of them sitting together. It looked like a perfect painting of love and innocence. Later that night, she uploaded the picture with a short caption, "Our evenings are full of peace and friendship." By the next morning, that photo too had spread across social media. People shared it with messages like, "This made my day and true friendship still exists." Some news pages even picked up the story, calling Bruno the gentle guardian and Arav the little angel. When Rohan saw how far their story had reached, he felt proud, but also thoughtful. "It's amazing how something so simple can touch so many hearts," he said. Mira agreed, adding, "It's because people see love here, real love that asks for nothing in return." Bruno, as always, didn't care about the attention. He only cared about his family. That night, as Arav slept soundly in his crib, Bruno lay close by with his head resting near the baby's blanket. The stars shone softly outside, and the gentle light from the lamp made the room glow with warmth. Mira stood by the door for a moment, watching the beautiful scene. She whispered, "You're our guardian, Bruno. Thank you for loving us the way you do." Bruno lifted his head slightly, looked at her, and wagged his tail once before closing his eyes again. The house was peaceful and everything felt right. The baby's soft breathing, the quiet air, and the loyal presence of their furry friend filled the night with pure comfort. For Rohan and Mira, life felt more meaningful than ever. Their home was full of small, priceless moments that showed how love can be found in the simplest things, like a baby's laugh and a dog's loyal heart. Days passed, and the little house of Mira and Rohan became a place full of joy. Arav was growing fast, and Bruno was always close to him. Wherever the baby went, Bruno followed quietly. If Arav played on the blanket, Bruno sat beside him. If Arav laughed, Bruno wagged his tail. If the baby cried, Bruno would rest his head near the baby to calm him. Their bond became stronger with every passing day. One morning, while Mira was preparing breakfast, she heard the doorbell. Rohan opened the door and found a man and a woman standing there with a camera. They introduced themselves as a team from a local news channel. "We saw your video online," the woman said with a friendly smile. "People everywhere are talking about your baby and your dog. We would love to meet them and share their story." Mira was surprised. She looked at Rohan and then smiled politely. "Of course," she said. "Please come in." Bruno barked softly as the guests entered, but soon wagged his tail when Mira said, "It's okay, Bruno, they're our friends." The news team looked around, admiring the warmth of the home. Then they saw Arav lying in his baby seat, smiling and waving his small hands. The woman from the team gently said, "Oh, he's so adorable." She bent down to greet him. Bruno walked forward and stood beside the baby, watching closely. The cameraman chuckled and said, "Look at that. He's protecting the baby even now." Mira smiled proudly. "Yes, he takes his job very seriously," she said. After some time, the team began recording the short story for their show. They asked Mira and Rohan a few questions about Bruno and Arav. Mira shared how Bruno had been part of the family since before Arav was born, and how he accepted the baby from the very first day. She said, "We were worried at first. We didn't know how Bruno would react, but he surprised us with his love. He treats Arav as if he's his own little brother." Rohan added, "It's beautiful to watch them grow together. They teach us about kindness every single day." When it was time to record Bruno and Arav together, the scene happened naturally. Arav started making soft giggles, and Bruno placed his paw gently near him, as if to say hello. The baby held onto Bruno's paw and smiled brightly. The camera captured every sweet second. The cameraman looked amazed and whispered, "This is real magic." After finishing the recording, the news team thanked the family and promised to share their story on television soon. "We hope this story inspires more people to love animals and treat them as family," the woman said kindly. That evening, when Rohan came home from work, he had exciting news. "They just showed our story on TV," he said happily. Mira quickly turned on the television and there they were, Arav, Bruno, and the happy home filled with love. The video was short but powerful. It showed the gentle friendship between a baby and a dog that had touched so many hearts. Calls and messages began pouring in again. Neighbors congratulated them, friends sent their love, and even strangers wrote kind messages. One message said, "Thank you for reminding us what real love looks like." Another said, "Bruno is an angel in disguise." As the days went by, Bruno became a small local celebrity. People in the park recognized him and waved when they saw him during walks. Children would come close to pet him, and he always stayed calm and friendly. But for Bruno, nothing changed. Fame meant nothing to him. His world was still small and perfect. Mira, Rohan, and baby Arav. One night, as Mira put Arav to sleep, Bruno came near and sat quietly beside the crib. Mira whispered, "Bruno, you've made our lives brighter. You're not just our pet. You're our blessing." Bruno looked up at her, his eyes full of warmth, and rested his head near Arav's blanket. The baby moved slightly in his sleep and placed his small hand on Bruno's fur. The moment was pure and peaceful. Outside, the stars twinkled softly and the cool wind made the curtains dance gently. The house was silent, filled with calm love. Mira looked at her family and thought to herself, "Sometimes, the most beautiful things in life come in the simplest forms." Bruno stayed there the whole night, like a quiet guardian watching over his little friend. The next morning, Mira woke up to see Bruno still in the same spot, and Arav smiling happily in his crib. It was a new day, and their bond felt stronger than ever. The world had fallen in love with their story, but for them it was just life, simple, gentle, and full of love that words could hardly describe. The days in Mira and Rohan's home passed peacefully, filled with laughter, love, and tiny moments that made life special. Arav was now a few months older, more active and full of energy. He had learned to roll on the floor and was starting to make funny baby sounds that made everyone laugh. Through every stage, Bruno stayed by his side, watching over him with the same love and care. One sunny morning, Mira placed Arav on a soft mat in the living room. Bruno lay nearby, resting his head on his paws. Arav looked at Bruno and smiled as if inviting him to play. Slowly, Bruno lifted his head and moved closer. The baby reached out with both hands and touched Bruno's nose, giggling with joy. Bruno stayed perfectly still, his eyes gentle and full of affection. Rohan, who was watching from the couch, whispered, "They understand each other without words." Mira nodded and said softly, "Yes, their friendship is pure." Later that day, the family decided to visit the nearby park. It was a beautiful afternoon, with golden sunlight falling through the trees. Arav was tucked comfortably in his stroller, and Bruno walked beside them, his leash held loosely by Rohan. The park was full of life, children playing, people walking, and birds flying freely in the sky. As they found a nice spot under a big tree, Mira spread a blanket on the grass. Arav was placed gently on it while Bruno sat proudly beside him. The baby laughed as he felt the cool breeze, and Bruno wagged his tail happily. It was a simple scene, but to Mira and Rohan it felt like the most perfect moment in the world. Many people in the park recognized them. One little girl came running and said, "That's Bruno. I saw him on TV." Mira smiled and replied kindly, "Yes, that's him." The girl petted Bruno softly and he wagged his tail in response. Her mother, who stood nearby, said, "You have such a kind dog. It's so heartwarming to see your family together." Rohan thanked her and they all shared a warm smile. As the evening sun began to set, the sky turned golden and pink. The gentle light made everything look magical. Arav started to get sleepy, rubbing his tiny eyes and yawning softly. Mira picked him up and rocked him gently in her arms. Bruno watched quietly, his eyes following every small movement. When Arav finally fell asleep, Mira placed him back on the blanket. Bruno then did something that melted everyone's heart again. He slowly walked closer and lay beside the sleeping baby, his body curled protectively around him. His head rested near Araf's feet and his eyes closed peacefully. It looked as if Bruno was saying, "Don't worry, I'll keep you safe." Rohan quickly took out his phone and captured the moment. The photo showed the baby sleeping soundly, surrounded by love and safety. Later that night, Rohan uploaded it with the caption, "Some bonds are made from the heart." Within hours, the photo spread all over social media once again. Thousands of people shared it, leaving kind messages like, "This picture made my day," and "Love is the language everyone understands." Some even said it reminded them of their own pets and how animals bring peace into human lives. But for Mira and Rohan, it wasn't about fame or attention. It was about family, a family that included a little baby and a loyal dog who had become inseparable. That night, as they prepared to sleep, Mira looked at the picture one more time and said softly, "This will be Arav's first memory with Bruno. One day when he grows up, he'll see how deeply he was loved." Rohan smiled and replied, "Yes, and he'll know that love has no language, no limits." Bruno, hearing his name, lifted his head and wagged his tail before lying down again. He looked at Arav, who was already fast asleep, and then closed his eyes too. The soft rhythm of their breathing filled the room, creating a calm and comforting sound. The night passed peacefully. Outside, the moonlight entered through the window, shining gently over them. Inside, everything was quiet, warm, and full of love. In that small home, a baby and a dog had created something beautiful, a friendship that spoke louder than words. It reminded everyone who saw them that love doesn't need to be taught. It simply grows where kindness exists. From that day on, Bruno and Arav's story continued to spread joy everywhere. People remembered it not as a story of fame, but as a story of pure love, the kind that stays in your heart forever. And every time Mira looked at her son and Bruno together, she whispered the same words with a smile. "You two are proof that love, no matter how simple, can truly change the world." The house was quiet, peaceful, and full of warmth. Bruno's tail moved slightly as if he understood every word. Arav slept soundly beside him, his tiny hand resting on Bruno's soft fur. The world outside might have been large and busy, but inside that small home everything was perfect because love lived there.